first luxury fashion social currency brand, giving back to our children. If we don't do it, we'll never make it.
Shalom and welcome to the Kingdom Magazine, our second episode on the series of the Fight Against Anti-Shemitism. Tonight we'll be discussing the 400-year ongoing Black Holocaust. So before we dive in, we're going to do a recap of the fight against anti-Shemitism, the mainstream news, and the ongoing terror of hate against the Shemitic people, not just nationwide, but globally as well. And then we'll also welcome the Minister and Chairman of Information for the United Nation of Yisrael, Elder Shemaiah Samuel Yasharallah. So before we dive in, I'd love to welcome my co-host, Delia, to the stage.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to dive into this new episode and a much needed discussion that we need to have in our series of the fight against anti-Shemitism.
Yes. So honestly, I think we should just do our due diligence and revisit some of the points that we raised on our last episode in this series. Where did Sem originate? Because we all know anti-Semitic is the war cry that we hear all the time. And anti-Semitism, hostility, or prejudice against the Jewish people. Our people have been called anti-Semitic and all of this stuff, all these wild claims. But we know that Sem actually derives from Latin, Greek, German origins. So how could that possibly have anything to do with the Hebrew people? It doesn't make sense. That even leads us into the point of how they really ostracized and punished Whoopi Goldberg for her comments that she made on The View about the Holocaust not being about race and how it was just hatred from one human
is
to the
not
next.
asking for forgiveness. But after what
Suspended twice, not suspended twice, suspended for 2 weeks, actually, because of that. And so we're going to dive more into that today and see really what's behind the claim anti-Semitic. So as we're moving forward, let's touch on some of this mainstream news that's been going on. I know everyone has been seeing Russia, Ukraine, what's happening, World War III, possibly gas prices on the rise. It's just chaos. So Ukraine has been blocking actually their Black citizens and just Black people in general in their country from leaving. Has anyone seen that? Like, have you seen that, Delia? Like how they were really blocking them from actually fleeing from the war?
Yeah, it's utter insanity. I think there's something of a quarter of, college students are of African descent or Shemitic descent, and they're actually, helping the economy thrive by being there. And to treat them as though they are second-class citizens or not citizens at all, and blocking them from being able to leave the country is really crazy. You're putting your own people at risk and non-Ukrainians at risk by trying to stall, effective egress and block people from getting on the trains to leave. It's utter insanity. And then to ask, some of these students that are there to fight for them and put them on the front lines when they're already, being a benefit to their country by, making their economy thrive. They're paying their dues, going to school there. That's helping build up their country, and then to treat them that way is nonsense. It's madness. And then even the coverage of the crimes happening in the Ukraine, and they're not talking about how they're being anti-Shemitic and mistreating non-Ukrainians, but they're talking about how insane it is that blind-haired, blue-eyed people can be going through this right now. Like, they can understand Palestinians having being in a war-torn area, Iranians going through this, Syrians, but not, Europeans. That's insane. How could they possibly be dealing with a war-torn country at the moment?
Yeah, I think we should definitely take a look at some of the footage of what they're doing to our people in Ukraine. This sister right here was just talking about how, pretty much they were like, well, you're Black, you can't get on this train. What? Really keeping them there, and they're having to stay in these terrible conditions while all this chaos and mayhem is ensuing. No one can tell me that this is not an act of terror against the Shemitic people.
Right.
That girl was 17. Well, is 17. She's 17, attending college.
Yeah, a lot of these are young people going to school, trying to, better themselves. And they're now being faced with what could be certain death just because they aren't the right color. Did nothing wrong to anyone.
Yeah. And so then it also raises the question too, why is Ukraine not protecting our people? Not that we should expect anyone to protect us, because history has shown that we don't have protection anywhere. But why aren't they? And so then, the Most High told us why they're not. We should not be surprised. He already told us, listen, they're not going to. This is actually a plot against you.
Yeah.
Psalm 83 actually goes in depth about it.
Yeah, and I'll give a read of that. So Psalms 83, keep not thou silence, O Yah, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yah. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And I'll give background of who's being called out here. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagarenes, Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lot.
Before we go even further, I definitely want to bring our other co-host on, Vanessa. Really want to hear her thoughts about everything that's going on in Ukraine and how they're treating our people out there.
I am glad to join, guys. I couldn't last time, but I'm glad to be here now. I can't imagine what they're going through. I mean, I have kids that are that age, close to 17. And I can imagine what the parents alone of them babies are going through, let alone the babies themselves, because that's what they are. They're children still. So to put babies of that age through something like that, and it just leaves us helpless all the way around. And I can't imagine going through that right now.
Yeah, it certainly is a travesty. And I would hate to be studying abroad and this is happening and I can't get back home and there's nothing my family can do about it, all because of the color of my skin.
Absolutely. I mean, it just almost brings me to tears just thinking about it, because like I said, I envision my children going through that and literally being helpless and just watching your babies go through this. And no one's going to help. Nobody. Just because you were born Black.
Yeah. I mean, even watch on the screen how they're treating our people. Left on the tracks.
Wow.
They're literally fighting. If you would just get out of the way and let people get on, there are more trains coming. Because that's what they were telling some of the people there. Wait for the next train. Just let them get on so you can keep movement going. You're putting everybody at risk with this nonsense.
It's not even a women and children thing. It's a color thing at this point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, like we just read, Psalm 83 showing they're confederate against us. They've taken crafted counsel against us. So we already know this is an act of terrorism. This is a scheme that they've already put in place and are moving forward with it. Even in the case of, Russia is no better, actually. We just found out a week and a half ago, about WNBA star Brittany Griner, who was arrested in Russia, detained, and nobody even knew here. She had been detained for about 2 to 3 weeks, and the news just hit. And what was the terrible charge that she was charged with? Cannabis paraphernalia from the little vape cartridges.
Yeah, it was just oil. I think like hashish oil or something like. But apparently they treat that as marijuana in their country. But it's really crazy.
I just found
something like that.
I found the timing very suspicious as all of this is ensuing, and how Ukraine is treating us this way, Russia is treating her that way. It's like y'all definitely have a plot here, and the plot thickens. And not only are we being treated terribly in foreign lands, we already know, even in our own homeland, how terribly we're treated. Just a couple weeks ago, there was a teen mall fight in New Jersey, where a young Hispanic boy and a young Black boy were fighting. Apparently, it was some bullying going on, and only the Black boy was pinned to the ground by the police. And even the Hispanic young man was like, "Hey, like detain me, like we were both fighting," but they calmly sat him on the couch.
He even put his hands up like this to say, I'm willing to be detained. And they're just like, oh no, not you. You're fine. You're calm. You're being calm.
Wow. That is just outlandish. Like, I really didn't expect too much to happen with Brittany as far as us helping. Because we're at a wartime right now anyway, but honestly think the US cares like about our people. They really don't. I really don't think they do. But wow. All of it all around is just crazy. We're literally at war times right now.
Yes. Complete war. And it's like, what are we to do? We see all of this terrorism that's going on in the foreign land, in the homeland. No one can argue that we are the most hated people on this earth. But why though? Why are we the most hated? What have we done to be the most hated by literally everybody? Nobody likes us. Like if we're really like the Cinderella of the world. Like they hate on us and they keep us locked up, literally. And for what reason? Since the murder of George Floyd, actually, there have been 229 police murders of our people. How can you even tabulate a list? How can you even compile that? 200.
And that's just what's been reported.
Exactly.
That's just what's been reported.
And after, the George Floyd police reform bill, and look at this list. 229.
And the fact that you can scroll and keep scrolling and keep
scrolling
and keep going.
You're not at the end yet.
I have a cousin that passed away not too long ago, and wouldn't even passed away. Like he had no health issues, but he died in police custody, was never booked in. His car was driven back to his house versus impounded, but he died of natural causes.
Right.
But he was with the police, and none of that is not going to be added to that. So, I mean, it's crazy that that's what's just reported.
Right. That's what's just reported. And a lot of those names we've never even heard about.
Nope.
You hear the token ones, the ones that may spark protests and riots and all of this. All those other names are just lost in the wind. Like it's, another one. Here goes another one. Nobody's talking about this terrorism, this axis of evil that's going on with our people. And so that's why I think it's really relevant to discuss too, where did all of this come from? Where did the hate come from? Why are we the most hated? And so I'd love to read this notice from our next guest, who's a very special guest, Chairman and Minister of Information, Elder Shemaiah Samuel Yasharallah from the United Nation of Israel. And he writes, a crime against the populace has been committed. While trying to leave the Ukraine as everyone else, our people were stopped at the border trying to cross into Poland and were told that Blacks were not allowed, while white-skinned people were allowed to cross into Poland. Our people were subjected to walking hours in the freezing temperatures, fleeing their lives when trying to cross into Poland, only to be denied entry because of their skin color. It is not only a crime to deprive a people the opportunity to save and preserve their own lives, but it is blatant racism when based on the color of their skin. This confirms the ugly reality and the continued level of hatred against our people across the world. We reiterate, a crime against a populace has been committed. And so at this time, I'd love to introduce Elder Shemaiah to our discussion to dive into why are the Shemitic people facing such terrorism, and what is the UNY doing about it?
Shalom, family. Thank you for that introduction. Again, I am Shemaiah Samuel Yasharala, Chairman and Minister of Information for the United Nation of Israel. Our nation, your nation, one nation under the Most High Almighty Yah. And I'd like to say thank you to our hosts, our co-hosts, and everyone behind the scenes for creating this platform so that we can use this as a venue to speak to our people. And we do this quite often. One of the things that we like to reiterate to our people that we are all one people, and there's been billions of dollars spent across the globe to keep us segmented, divided, misunderstanding who we are. You know, we use terms as Black, African American, Jamaican, Haitian, Cuban, all those kinds of terms, just to name a few, that we associate ourselves with. But in reality, who are we? And that's what we're talking about today. Who is the Semitic people and who are the Shemitic people? We are the Shemitic people, a Hebrew people of the nation of Israel. And we are that remnant seed of the day that has been prophesied that will come forward in this day and time. For the Almighty has declared that Yahudah shall come forward and stand and speak on behalf of the whole nation. So as we come forward in humility, we are coming forward by the power and strength of the Most High Almighty Yah. And there are two subjects that we're going to cover tonight that we spoke, issued official statements about, and that's the Whoopi Goldberg incident and also what's happening to our people in the Ukraine. As we all know, Whoopi Goldberg was ostracized because she made a statement that the Holocaust was not about race. She reiterated, it was not about race, but it was about inhumanity against man. Now the question must be asked, why was she ostracized for saying that the Holocaust was not about race? So that should prompt us to look into that even more. And the way we do that sometimes it's not direct, but it's sidebar. So let's do that. Let's talk about that. There's a terminology called Yiddish today that we take to be Hebrew. And if you go look up the term Yiddish, you'll find that by definition, it's a German language spoken by the Ashkenazi. And you may ask, who are the Ashkenazis? And so that segues us into even the Ukraine situation. So when we look at Ashkenazi and even Khazar origin people, they are covered. They are under certain countries that they come from certain countries like Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Germany, the Balkans, Turkey. So when we talk, so with that being said, those countries are just a few of the ancient Ottoman and Byzantine Empire. And why is that important? It's important because those people are the same people. So when we go back to the term Yiddish, and it was a German language spoken by the Ashkenazi, was not Hitler German as well?
He was.
Was not the Nazi Empire German? They were German, right? So if they were German and the Ashkenazi were German that speak Yiddish, how could it be about race, as Whoopi Goldberg said it wasn't about? It wasn't about race. You know, it was indeed about religious division. The Ashkenazi took on the form of what they call Judaism, which is a religion. If it was not a religion, if it was a race, how could one be grafted into Judaism? You know, you hear that all the time. You know, they can conform or convert to Judaism. How can one convert into a race? Can one convert into being African? No. Can they convert into being Russian? No. But you can convert into being Catholic, Christian, Islam, which is not a religion either, or Muslim, and you can convert into Judaism. So let's tell the truth. We have to come forward today and speak our truth under no uncertain terms. We have to be strong and of good courage and fear not. And I'd like to take this time to put this out here, since we're on YouTube where everybody can see. We would like to call for the Ashkenazi, the Sephardic Jew, those that represent those two aspects. Come forward and engage us in a conversation about the Shemitic people and the Semitic people. Who is the Hebrews of the nation of Israel? Let's talk about what happened during the transatlantic slave trade when the Portuguese bought slaves from the coast of Africa and took them to North, South, well, actually started at South and Central America and later migrated to North America. And we were spread across all the plantations on both areas. Let's talk about that. Let's have an open dialogue. Who were the families that owned the slave ships? Who were the Portuguese? If we go back and do our history and research, we'll discover, even prior to that, that Christopher Columbus himself was a Sephardic Jew. Now, so when we look at the Portuguese, when you look at Sephardic, by definition, those are people that come from Spain and Portugal. That's the absolute truth. We're not telling anything. We're not saying anything that's hypothetical or we're pulling out the sky. Sephardic people are those from Spain. And the Sephardic people speak a specific language. They speak Ladoni, which is another term for Latin. And then also the Ashkenazi, and they speak Yiddish. And the Sephardic speaks Ladoni. So why are we taking that to be Hebrew today? We really need to analyze the things that we have associated ourselves with and know the difference between Semitic and Shemitic. So as we dive into that, it's important to take a look at the foundation of who the Shemitic people are. And we can also take a look at who the Ashkenazi are, according to scripture. So if I can indulge, could I have one of you sisters go to Genesis chapter 10 for me? And we can pick it up at verse 1. And this is going to set the foundation about who Shem is.
So Genesis 10, chapter 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons
All right, now it says the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Remember, you heard me say Ashkenazi. They are of the seed of Japhet. If they are the seed of Japhet, how can they be of Shem?
I'm done.
So right. And why is it today they don't say Shem, they say Sem? That's because it's a term that was created not according to scripture, but it's truth mixed with lie. You remember in Genesis chapter 2, the Almighty told Adam not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What is good and evil? Truth mixed with lies. So what has happened throughout time, we have been fed truth mixed with lies. And we have been so disenfranchised and disconnected from the word of the Almighty that we oftentimes take the lie for the truth and the truth for the lie. And we're confused. So just so we read about Ashkenaz, and you can trail that throughout history and find that these are the actual Ashkenazi people who come from Japhet. Let's go skip down to verse 21 and let's read that from that point.
Genesis 10, verse 21. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam and Asher, and Arphaxad and Lud and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz and Hul and Gether and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and the brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad and Shalef and Hazar Maveth and Jerah and Hadoram and Azal and Diklah and Obal and Abimael and Sheba and Ophir and Havilah and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And their dwelling was from Mesha, as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, and their lands, after their nations.
Hallelujah. So when we look at the difference between the seed of Japhet and the seed of Shem, we didn't see anything that says Sem, S-E-M, did we? We saw Shem, S-H-E-M. So the question must be asked, where did this terminology Sem come from? Not only that, when we look at Judaism, they have terms such as synagogue. What did we have? Tabernacles and temples. They have terms that they use as rabbis. What terms did we use? High priest or priest. Why is there such a difference? We have to start to analyze those things and pay attention to what's out there. So as we continue with this discussion, we came forward and we took a stand. We spoke on behalf of Whoopi Goldberg. We issued a letter to the media, to CBS, NBC, The View, the president that actually disciplined her. And we spoke about the very things that we're talking about right now. And we stood for Whoopi Goldberg. And we want Whoopi Goldberg to know that we stood for her and we speak on her behalf, and she's not by herself. And we will continue to take a stand for our people, no matter who they are. If they come under attack for speaking the truth, their nation is going to speak for them as well. So as we get into the Ukraine situation, we have our people on the border. Now think about this. The Ukraine is crying out for help because Russia is attacking their sovereignty. In a time where their sovereignty is being attacked, they still have the gall and the time and the audacity to be racist against our people. When you're crying out for help, and we haven't heard one newscaster, one nation, or anybody that has been in support of Ukraine speak up on behalf of our people that this open, blatant racist act has taken place. What's going on? I asked that question to our people. Why do we continue to sit back and not say anything? We take the time to argue and debate amongst each other, whether we be Christian, whether we be Muslim, whether we conscious that we Israel, and in Israel we argue whether we be New Testament or whether we be Torah only, whether we believe in JC or Yeshua HaMashiach or whether we don't. But we don't stand up and speak on behalf of our people abroad. There's something wrong with us, Israel. It's time for us to put aside our differences and stand as a people. We have all kinds of isms and schisms that divide us. We need to come together as a people and be unified. The scripture says, gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. Are we gathering ourselves together, or are we further dividing ourselves based upon our own belief? So these are things that we continue to talk about from a national standpoint. Again, the United Nations of Israel is not a camp. It's not a club. It's not a group. It's not a Knesset. We come forward as a nation, emerging and rising from the ashes by the power and strength of the Almighty. Does that mean that everybody's going to agree? No. Israel has always been disjointed. But no matter, when the Almighty brings forth his word to be spoken, when he opens up the mouths of his messengers will continue to speak and speak loudly. We will, without fear, with strength, being strong and of good courage and fearing not. So we want to let the world know that we will not stand for anti-Shemitism anymore. You know, we in the letter we talk about our people. We want to let our people know. When we say our people, we're talking about the Shemitic Hebrew Israelites of today, as we are scattered across the four corners of the earth. We may not know, all of us may not know what tribe we come from, but if you come through that transatlantic or even the sub-Saharan slave trade that happened prior to the transatlantic slave trade, you more than likely are Israel. If you suffer as we all suffer, you more than likely are Israel. Because what tells us, if we read in the word of Yah in Deuteronomy chapter 28, the curses was put upon Israel if they did not honor the covenant that Yah gave on Mount Sinai, in Horeb, or in Moab. And we know by virtue of default of the position that we're in now, that our ancestors did not honor that covenant. That's why we still scattered across the four corners of the earth. That's why we still looking for love in all the wrong places. We got to stop doing that. We got to stop repeating the same thing, expecting different results. It's a cliche, but it's true. And what do they call that? Insanity. So we have to unify, family. Let us take a stand. And again, I cannot reiterate even more. We definitely want to have a conversation with those that call themselves Jews and Semites, those that are Sephardic, and those that are of the Ashkenazi or Khazarian descent. We want to have an open dialogue, an open forum, on center stage, on live TV. And we know that they control the networks. So if they really want to talk, we here. They got the power. Bring us to the stage and we're ready to speak. So with that being said, family, feel free to ask me any questions that you would like to.
That was powerful. And no one can negate all of the facts, not just from the word of the Most High, but from the footage and from just historical evidence that shows who the Shemitic people are and why we're falling to this terrorism every day. And even furthermore, I want to ask Delia this, because I know you did some research on this. This is an economic attack too. Some of your favorite companies benefited and profited off of the enslavement of our people.
Definitely. You know, Lehman Brothers, they had to issue an apology, you know, that they profited significantly from slavery in all likelihood. But even in the language that they use, it's still kind of trying to take the blow out of it. You know, Rothschild, Sons and Bank in London, also linked to slavery. There's some reports that the Dutch West India Company, like 25 to 50% of those shareholders were purported to be Jewish, and a large owner of slave ships at the time, Portuguese Jews to be exact. The 1992 Forbes list listed 33% of all U.S. billionaires were Jewish, but they only made up 2.5% of the U.S. population. And, you know, how did all of this happen? Where did you get all of your money? You know, just looking at the paper trail, looking at reparations law and tracking down these the monetary benefits that these Jewish companies and other white companies have profited off of our backs, our ancestors' backs. It's very disgusting, honestly.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Also with that being said, that segues into paying attention to the products that you have in your home that are edible. I encourage everyone, when you leave the show, take some time, go to your food pantry, go to the refrigerator, look at your canned goods, look at your anything that has food on it. 90% of all the products that you have will have a K or a U inside of a circle or inside of a triangle. Not many of us know what that means. Those are the so-called Jewish or rabbinic associations that are paid to certify food products and call it kosher. The thing about that is they make a few cents off of every product when that happens. So if we purchase food of any kind in this land or across the world that has those things on it, we're virtually financing these people. So if we're financing them, how can we ever be anti-Semitic, no matter what we say? We're financing your cause. The U.S. government pays so much retribution to the Holocaust victims, but we can't get our 40 acres and a mule. Go figure that. There's something wrong with that picture. So I encourage, again, these are truths, family. Go look at your food pantry. Look at your canned goods, your potato chips, your pop, your bread, even eating certain fruits, frozen foods. Look at the symbols that's on there. And we can see some displayed on the screen right now. You will find those symbols on your food products. That's why as we move forward as a nation, as we come together as a people, as we develop our commerce, Yah willing, we will have our own certification process that we benefit off of as a nation, as a people. So, it takes some time to build, but the Almighty will do that in his own strength and his own power, because we don't have any power of ourselves. But as we continue to walk according to what thus saith Yah and humble ourselves to him, he will continue to rise us from the ashes.
I definitely believe that we should congratulate the United Nation of Israel as well for standing against anti-Shemitism, because nobody else is. All these groups and congregations and organizations and whomever, they're not standing with us. But our nation is. Our letter to Whoopi Goldberg addressing that issue, standing against anti-Shemitism, the letter discussing the inhumanity against our people in Ukraine and Russia and Poland, is fighting against anti-Shemitism. This is a fight that we must fight. And the Most High told us, come together as a nation. I am your creator. I am your God. And he's going to protect us and help us through this battle. He's the only one that can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to let our listeners know as well, we have worked and gotten word from the Almighty on how to construct exemption from vaccination letters. And I'd like to thank the Most High, because those letters have been phenomenal in helping our people stay away from being vaccinated and keeping their jobs. So we continue. That's part of fighting for our people, fighting for our Shemitic people as well. And about 3 years ago, we had a document that we issued worldwide listing all the crimes of all nations that participated in the sub-Saharan slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade, even the Catholicism, because the popes during those times issued their edicts that allowed slavery and made it lawful, particularly for our people that came from the continent of Africa. And so and give you a little bit of history about how we got to inside of Africa as a Shemitic people, as Hebrew Israelites. During the sub-Saharan slave trade, prior to 70 around 70 CE or 68 CE, when we fled Jerusalem at the time, we went into Arabia. A lot of us went into Arabia. We lived in Arabia for hundreds of years. And then later on, around 600 CE, Muhammad came forth, and he saw that, you know, he understood Torah. He understood that Israel was a covenant people. But remember, the Ishmaelites were also Hebrew people. But, you know, they knew that the covenant was with Isaac. But that was an attempt by Muhammad to take that covenant back. So therefore they wrote the Quran, and then there were wars fought in Arabia. And because of our sins against the Almighty, because we broke the covenant, we breached the covenant, because there was a question asked earlier, why are we most hated across the planet? This just cannot be arbitrarily. This is by the hand of our God, our Elohim, because we walk contrary to him. He gave us, though, the footprint on how to get back under his bond. And first and foremost, we must humble ourselves as a people. So because we broke that, we had that breach during the sub-Saharan slave trade, we got scattered throughout the continent of Africa, picking up all kind of ethnic backgrounds throughout all the different countries that are there. And for those that don't know, Africa, that name Africa is a European name. It was not always called Africa. It was called Akibulan prior to that. And, you know, when you really talk to those that we call Africans, they don't say they're I'm Ghanaian, or I'm a Nigerian. You know, I'm from Zimbabwe. They talk about the country that they're from. That's like, even though that term European, you don't have one that come from Italy say they're European. They say they're Italian, right? But all we know as a people, particularly here in North America, is that we come from Africa. And even worse than that, you ask some of us, they'll say, well, hey, my family from Mississippi. You know, and we have family reunions with all these European names upon us that lets you know that we come off the plantation. How did we come from Africa or the Middle East with the name of Jackson and Smith? How did that happen? If we pull out our IDs, we'll see the European name all over us. That tells us who is in control of us. That's not our heritage. So those are some of the things that we need to really pay attention to as well, family. Study your history. Look into who you are. Don't just take it arbitrarily that you a Jackson or you a Smith. You know, look beyond that.
Yes, for sure. Well, this has truly been a dynamic show. So much history, so many facts have been shared. Even the word from the Most High. You know, he wrote in the law, in the book, why we're dealing with the things that we're dealing with. And so I'm so grateful that we're diving into this series and really uncovering the fallacies that have been written as historical fact to uphold atrocities against our people. So I really thank you, Elder Shemaiah, for being here with us. Thank you, Delia, for being here with us. Thank you, Vanessa, for being here with us. And to our viewers, thank you for engaging with us in this conversation. We're going to have plenty more episodes, plenty more conversations in this series of the fight against anti-Shemitism. So before we close out, are there any last remarks?
Well, I would just like to say to our listeners and to everyone that's on the show and participating, thank you. Thank you for listening. I would like to say also, when you get a chance, go to www.yahwillgather.us. That's www.yahwillgather.us, and get involved. Learn about your nation. Take a stand and help us fight against anti-Shemitism. We have some national IDs that are forthcoming. They will be on our webpage pretty soon, where you can register and get your national ID card declaring that you are Israel. You will also be able to go to the website and order your national flag and your tribal flags. The national flag is already there, and the tribal flags are on their way as well. So I would just like to say, on behalf of the United Nations of Israel, we send forth our love, our compassion, and our strength, and we will continue to stand for our people.
Thank you so much for this. Truly enjoyed this conversation. And until next time, family, shalom and be blessed and stay safe.
Hallelujah. Shalom.
Shalom.